Hi and welcome to LawWiser. Today we would be discussing an interesting topic about corporate due diligence. We all know about it and we know it's a crucial process for any company looking into mergers or acquisitions or any other specific purpose. And with advancement of technology, the process has also evolved over time and there are various crucial steps that it involves. It may also differ depending on the purpose it is being conducted for. And so today in this video, we would be discussing the scope and the various aspects revolving around corporate due diligence. To discuss this, we have expert Mr. Adeesh Anto. He is partner at SAP Legal based in Chennai. Welcome, Adeesh. Thank you for taking time out for us.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be with you, Sania.
So just to begin with, if you can, explain the basics to our audience first, as in, what is due diligence and its scope?
Due diligence is basically a process of research and analysis before making any investment. It's a very simple process. For example, if you were to buy a piece of land, you would go to the extent of examining the title, the current market valuation, the flow of title, whether there has been statutory compliances, etc., etc. The same is the case where if you're going to buy a company, or when you're looking at a merger or an acquisition, you have to do your due diligence to see if there have been the assets and its liabilities, whether there is a flow and the ownership and the title, etc. And there is absolutely no substitute for due diligence. This is an essence of flow from what used to be called as a caveat emptor, as in the buyer's beware. So before the buyer puts his money into the bag, into the seller's pocket, it is important that he is aware of all the risks and liabilities that he's undertaking. That is the scope. And the scope of due diligence is as wide as the horizon can extend. Because after having purchased the asset, one cannot go back and say, there were liabilities to undisclosed. There was something. What is saddled, he's saddled with whatever he's taken. So this is the scope and the necessity for due diligence.
Thank you, Adeesh. Thank you for explaining that to our audience. So that obviously takes us to the next part of it. What are the steps that are involved in due diligence? If you can explain that. And, I will actually also take the next question along with it, along while you're explaining these crucial steps. If you can also highlight to our audience, the purpose of, having these different steps, and at the same time, which one are usually considered to be the most crucial one?
Now, before we get into that question, Sania, one needs to understand the different types of due diligence. Before a merger or an acquisition, or even before one is looking to purchase an asset, one needs to split the diligence into different types. The first would be the commercial due diligence, where you have your accountants doing your financial due diligence, your accounting due diligence, your tax due diligence, etc. The next step would be the operational due diligence, whether there are synergies in the acquisition, the synergies in the production, etc. And last but not least, of course, the most important one is the legal due diligence. Today, we will be discussing primarily about the legal due diligence. Now, with regard to legal due diligence, the steps involved are primarily what one would do is send in a preliminary questionnaire. Apart from checking the public documents, sending a preliminary questionnaire, and depending on the feedback, you ask for require for documents. The procedure normally involves, apart from identifying the documentations, the target company provides the documents in a data room where you have, your legal professionals, your financial professionals, your account professionals, all of them sit across, and in a data room they provide all the documents. Now, the most important process in due diligence, whether it is financial, commercial, or legal, is to understand the goal of the project, the purpose of the acquisition. Now, depending on what is the purpose of the acquisition, whether it is supply chain integration or it is backward integration or is adding capacity or capacity enhancement, the due diligence will have to proceed with the final goal in mind. So this, in my opinion, is the primary and the most important aspect of a due diligence exercise. Apart from, of course, other thing is a routine exercise of perusing documents, seeing statutory compliances, etc. After analyzing the documents, what one has to do is one would normally red flag what one thinks is our issues. Now, this is applicable across financial, accounting, tax, and legal due diligence. The purpose of this red flagging is this is what is going to be the cornerstone for your final agreement. Whatever the issues you finally hear, because this has to be covered in your reps warranty and your indemnification. So this is the red flagging is the next most important aspect. After you set your goals, you could peruse your documents and you red flag issues. This red flagging of issues is what is going to be covered in your final report and in your final agreement.
Thank you, Adeesh. Actually, you have very simply explained to our audience, what are these important steps and which one is actually important. Thank you for highlighting that. That actually takes, now with technology being so involved in every process of what we do, how do you think is that it has also assisted the due diligence process? And as you said, it also connects to our last question as well along with it. Considering, pandemic has made us more relied on technology. So how do you think it has impacted overall due diligence?
Absolutely. I mean, if you were to analyze the history of due diligence, even in the last 20 years or so, one would say, like 20 years ago, one would be called for the due diligence process. You would find all the experts, legal, technical, and operational experts sitting in one room with the data room, where one had with 3 keys and access to the data room with all the documents. Where now documents could go out and only documents come in, and all sorts of things. Today, with the advancement of technology, what has come is the data rooms have literally become virtual. So I can sitting in Chennai do a due diligence of a company in Mumbai, because all their documents are uploaded into a virtual data room with exclusive access. The technology has immensely helped with regard to perusal and examination of documents. Secondly, even with regard to perusal of public documents, earlier, 20 years ago, if you wanted to peruse a document from the Ministry of Corporate Affairs or the ROC, one had to literally apply for documents, go to the land registry or the Ministry of Corporate Affairs to extract documents. Today, everything is available online, which this has drastically helped reduce timelines in the completion of due diligence exercise. Now, with the pandemic also coming in, this has kind of hastened the process. What would have otherwise happened across industries? Earlier, the software and the data rooms being restricted to high-tech and the larger companies. Today, even the smaller and the mid-sized companies have all resorted and adopted the technology so much that this kind of hastens the whole process. Of course, the activity is yet to pick up post-pandemic, but certainly we do see a lot of action post happening now.
Thank you, Adeesh, for actually highlighting that and telling an audience how actually now. Obviously, with pandemic, one of the best advantages would be that smaller and mid-sized company also going more technology driven and uploading all their data for ease of access for especially purposes like due diligence. So thank you, Adeesh. Thank you for taking time out for this, and this one has been really interesting one. Thank you.
Absolute pleasure, Sania. Thank you so much.